he nailed it. So I just wanted to recognize him on the job he did. And I'll tell you a funny story real quick with the bird proofing, the spikes on top. Scott from Fast Signs had left his lift up here for us to use to put the bird spikes up on top of the tail fin. Well, we didn't have any, he set it over in the corner and we didn't have anything big enough to tow it over. So John Markley and I were standing there trying to figure out how we're going to get up there with our ladder. It's not long enough, our extension ladder. So some guy happened to pull in, start taking pictures, and saw him, and I looked and I'm like, dude, you have a bucket truck. You want to do us a huge favor? He's like, yeah, what do you need? I said, can you pull in there and get those up there for us? He's like, yeah, no problem. So 5 minutes, they were done. So it is pretty cool that, you know, anytime somebody's driving by, they see you working there, they stop and, you know, help out. You have anything, Dave?
You did good.
Okay. All right. Well, before anybody gets a hook out, I guess I'll turn it back over to Mike here.
Great job, good stories. I told you, settle in, you're going to hear some good stuff here today. We are honored to have with us today, representing the Intruder Association, retired Lieutenant Commander Mike Novak, immediate past president of the Intruder Association. The mission of the Intruder Association is to preserve and promote the legacy of US Navy and Marine Corps A-6 Intruder community, keep others informed of the A-6 aircraft mission and accomplishments, and provide for continued camaraderie among those who flew and supported the aircraft and its squadrons, thus preserving the legend of the Intruder. Lieutenant Commander Novak joined the Navy in 1978 and was designated a Naval Flight Officer and assigned to operate the A-6E Intruder aircraft. After 20 years in the Navy and civil service, Mike retired in 2019 and joined Northrop Corporation, or Northrop Grumman, where he most recently was the Deputy Director, Warfare Integration, on the staff of the Chief of Naval Operations. We are honored to have Mike Novak and members of the Intruder Association share this day with us. Please welcome Commander Mike Novak.
Hey, thanks again for being here today. As you probably figured out, all of us aviators got to have a call sign. Later on at the reception, you can buy me a beer and I'll tell you how I got snake. You're also honored today. We got the current president of the Intruder Association, Rod. You want to raise your hand and stand up? So the A-6 was one of the unique airplanes. It was flown by the Navy and the Marine Corps. So you'll see a lot of red and you'll see a lot of blue. And we love each other now. I really appreciate you guys putting this right between Flag Day and Father's Day tomorrow. We got up here in time to see some of the Flag Day ceremonies. That was really impressive. You guys are a very patriotic community, and it shows today. It was my honor back in the day when I was the president. Don Young called me out of like nowhere. You know, hey, I got an intruder. And I'm like, who are you? Where are you? Where did you get an intruder? You know, those kind of questions. But after we established the bona fides, it was then great. We used what we have a very good communication system where we get out to all the people that used to fly and maintain intruders. And we said, hey, we got a guy. He's repairing an intruder in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and needs some donations. So that was the first thing we did, was we got some donations into Don to help with some of the, defray some of the cost of this restoration. And then as you guys got close to the end, we put the word out again about the bricks you're putting around. So a lot of people want to have a little memorial about the time they spent with the Intruder Association, what squadrons they were in. So please, as you're walking around the airplane, look at those bricks and see that. We also were lucky enough to find 2 aircrew that actually flew this very airplane in combat, and you'll get to hear more about them later. But just wanted to introduce them to you now, and you can talk to them about their call signs later. So Mike, voter vote, raise your hand, Mike. He was the pilot. And sitting right next to him, like we always did in the airplane, pilot, BN, side by side, very unique configuration, is Craig Gator Tuning. Okay. They're going to tell us a story about a very special mission they did when they paid a visit to a city called Benina in Libya, and gave a little message to a guy named Gaddafi. I'm not going to take any of their thunder away from them. What I want to end up doing is just thanking you all. I mean, the work you and all the people that helped Don did to restore this airplane to the condition that it is today is just outstanding. For any of us that flew or maintained the airplane, you're giving us a nice day, a really nice day. Thank you for what you've done to accomplish this. This is a great memorial park, every piece of it. So I just want to say thank you again, and God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thanks for being here today, and for members of your association who are here today to join us for this great day, celebration. I'd like to now introduce our keynote speakers. If you've walked around the AK-503, you'll notice that there are two names painted on the sides of the fuselage. Those of then Commander Craig Chenning and then Lieutenant Commander Mike Vogt. These aviators were among the last to fly this aircraft while it was in active service, and we're truly honored and privileged to share this momentous day with them. I'm sure this event may bring back a few memories, and as Mike said, engender a few probably too. Are those war stories or are they sea stories? Or both. Now retired Captain Mike Vogt spent 26 years in the Navy. His numerous deployments included assignments to VA-34 on the USS John F. Kennedy, Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 5 at China Lake, California, and VA-35 aboard the USS Nimitz. Future assignments would include VA-55 aboard the USS Coral Sea, VA-65 as Executive Officer, Commander of VA-65. Following an assignment to the Staff Commander, Naval Air Forces Atlantic, he was selected to be the XO of the USS Saratoga and then proceeded to NAS Pensacola as Chief of Staff, Executive Assistant to the Chief of Naval Education and Training. Captain Vogt holds the Legion of Merit with 3 Oak Leaf clusters, the Meritorious Service Medal with 4 Oak Leaf clusters, the Air Medal with Combat V, and numerous other awards and decorations. On the other side of the aircraft is the name of Craig Chenning. Now retired, Captain Chenning received his aviator wings in 1970. He served as an aviator with Attack Squadron 35 aboard the USS America, where he made 1 Mediterranean deployment and a combat deployment to Southeast Asia. He later served with Attack Squadron 42. Captain Chenning went on to have a distinguished career aboard the USS Nimitz, Squadron 65, Squadron 55 on the USS Coral Sea, participating in combat operations in the Gulf of Sidra and Benina Airfield. After numerous other operations and command assignments, Captain Chenning completed his Navy career as the commander of Attack Wing 1 as Commodore. During his career, he amassed over 4,000 flight hours in the A-6 aircraft and has over 1,000 air carrier landings. His awards and decorations include the Legion of Merit, Meritorious Service Medal, 3 individual and 9 strike flight air medals, 6 Navy Commendation Medals with Combat V, and a Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry. On behalf of Lycoming County Veterans Commission, it is a distinct honor to present Captains Craig Chenning and Mike Vogt and their A-6 Intruder AK-503.
Gotta get positioned properly. Gator's always gotta be on the right. There's a raised gun on the right. Because I am. Good morning, Williamsport. Good morning. Good morning, intruders. Good morning. Got any cupcakes out there? Yeah. Tigers. I'm with you. How about green pawns? We're here. There's some. Yep. War horses? Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know Gator and I are both flattered that you're going to share this unusual ceremony with us. And I want to also, before getting into my personal comments, to recognize Mayor Slaughter. Thank you for joining. Representative Flick, thank you also for joining. And County Commissioner Scott Metzger. You've heard his name a couple of times today already. But I can assure you that with the time I spent on the telephone with him and through emails and texts, etc., he's the go-to guy for anything that has to do with this airplane and this park. Don Young, the driver behind 503's acquisition and restoration, thank you, sir, for all your efforts on our collective behalf. All the intruders here, I know, are appreciative of what you've done. Also want to recognize the restoration volunteers. Any volunteers here today? Oh, you've got a lot of beer to drink this afternoon. Maintainers and ordies from 42, 55, and 65. I know there's a few of you guys here. Thank you for joining us. And, you know, if you haven't broken the code already, this is going to be an audience participation presentation. Pay attention. Don't daydream, because the next question may be directed to you. I think it's also appropriate that I recognize the driving force in my life, my wife Sharon Vogt, who is over here. And if I don't do something stupid between now and Monday we'll celebrate our 52nd wedding anniversary. Admiral Stan Bryant, then Commander Stan Bryant, was the stand-up commanding officer of VA-55 in the summer of 1985. I was crewed with Stan, and I learned to fly with the heavies. I learned how to say yes, sir, and I knew when to turn left and when to turn right because they told me. So I was their preferred pilot. Well, Stan sent me an email on Wednesday, and I want to read an excerpt, so bear with me for a minute. And the excerpt goes as follows. Potsy tells me that you two have a chance to say some words, and I was wondering if you could pass to all of the war horses in attendance that I regret not being able to be there. It was my honor and privilege to serve with America's best as a war horse, and I cherish the memories of my days standing up VA-55 with them. They really did make it happen. Thanks, Stan. Now, to reinforce Rear Admiral Bryant's assessment of the 12 pilots and bombardiers who flew in the Benina strike, 8 earned aviation command and 2 selected for flag. This extremely high percentage of command selectees reflects the standards referenced by Rear Admiral Bryant. Sadly, I'd also like to recall 3 of our Benina strike squadron mates who are no longer with us. Rear Admiral Jack Godlewski, Captain Mark Himmler, and Captain Ralph Myko. At the airplane, you'll note commemorative bricks already in place for Jack and Nose, and I think I can probably pulse the war horses in attendance to cough up some bucks to get something for Mouse as well. So talk to me afterwards. Again.
Once again, many thanks to all of the distinguished guests from the local area that have worked tirelessly to put this all together, make this old airplane look like it should look, like it used to look. I'd like to recognize my wife of 47 years, Susan, over there. Both of those wives were listening to or watching CNN on the 15th of March of '86 when that airplane went to work. It was an interesting evening. In a lot of ways. I can see them grumbling over there. A little bit about me. I came in the Navy straight from LSU. Back then there was a program called AOC, Aviation Officer Candidate, AOCS, Candidate School. And you go to Pensacola, you meet a Marine DI straight from Paris Island, who is there to have fun for him for 16 weeks. If you get past him, you get commissioned. We started with something like 60 kids. When we got commissioned, there was 22. Some couldn't swim, some couldn't PT, some just gave up. But Drill Instructor Godwin will always have a place in my heart, as he should, because he is the driving force that put me eventually in that airplane. There was a movie a long time ago called The Officer and a Gentleman. That's what Pensacola was like then, for me. Anyhow, I flew every model of the A-6 ever introduced to the fleet. My share of hours, my share of traps. It was a great machine. It was reliable, and it always told you the truth. So you could hang your hat on it all the time. Okay, voter, we'll tag team again here.
I was commissioned with the class of 1972 from the US Naval Academy. Due to the post-Vietnam flight training bottleneck, my graduating class was sent to sea for a year. Oh boy. Shortly after getting married, and much to Sharon's chagrin, I deployed to the Mediterranean as navigator aboard USS Canoe, DE 1056. I was fortunately able to escape the ship in January of '73, made my way back to Virginia Beach, and picked up Sharon, and we headed south to Pensacola at best speed to start flight training. I earned my wings in May of 1974 at NAS Kingsville, Texas, and received my first choice of aircraft, the A-6 Intruder. Like Gator, I was privileged to fly every model of the A-6. Between us, we have logged over 8,000 flight hours and nearly 2,200 carrier-arrested landings in the Intruder during our respective careers.
Once I arrived in VA 55, I realized it was the newest stand-up A-6 squadron in the Navy. We had 16 jets. They were all relatively new, and we had a unique capability. That airplane does not have a FLIR turret on it. That's an infrared and laser device that hangs underneath the nose. It gave you very accurate determination of what the target is, where it is, the range to it for precise weapons release and guidance when you use the laser. In any event, I joined the VA 55 that was going to deploy aboard USS Carl C. My previous sea tour, I was the maintenance officer in Attack Squadron 65, where a lot of these guys are from, where I was designated an Air Wing Strike Lead. And once we got to Carl C, and I was in VA 55, that carried over. I became the designated strike lead for VA 55 as well. And what that means, targets that are deemed desirable to be destroyed by command authority, you have to plan them, you have to coordinate with all the ships in the battle group, all the other airplanes in the air wing. And that's what a strike lead, or air wing strike lead is responsible for. Once I got to Coral C and VA 55, I realized we were going to deploy to the Med in the fall of 1985. As I said, by the end of the year, I was a qualified strike lead for the wing in Coral C. Prior to leaving Norfolk for the deployment, the flag staff, that is the Admiral staff, handed out designated potential targets for the mid-crews. go past Gibraltar, and you got to be ready to roll once you get there. So on the crossing, each individual that's a strike lead is handed a package that says, okay, this is your target, go plant it. Come back and brief the admiral on how you're going to hit it, what you're going to take to it, what the timing is, and how many airplanes you need. So on the crossing from Norfolk to Gibraltar, that's what I did, is what all of us did that were strike leads for the air wing. And once you get there, and it's approved, and you make the modifications that the admiral designates, tells you need to make, 3 bags full, you put it in a can, and you put it away. And that's what we did with the plan for Benina Airfield. Voter, back to you. Actually,
You're still up. You're still
yeah, I want to get in the shade, you know.
Drink water. You okay?
No, I'm good. Now, once I looked at the target closely, it's a pretty massive airfield. It's a MiG fighter base, 25 miles east of Benghazi out in the desert. Pretty flat ground around it, except to the east there was a big ridge line, but that was about 8 or 10 miles away. Later on, that would prove to be the best point with which to observe the damage that we did that night, because there was part of the SEAL team up there taking pictures and watching us. Anyhow, I looked at the defensive systems, the guns, the missiles, and where they were located, and determined the best way to strike Benina was going to be night, low level. And when I say low level, I mean 300 feet above the ground going 450 knots, trying to avoid the ridge lines and the mountains, and putting as much dirt between you and the SAM sites that are shooting at you as you can. That's how you survive. After my planning and the Admiral's approval, it was put back in the can and we waited.
And we waited. And we waited. By mid-March of 1986, Coral Sea was stationed in the central Mediterranean. We've been flying pretty boring, actually, armed surface combat air patrol missions for several weeks in the Gulf of Sidra, below Gaddafi's purported line of death. Our SUCAP, or Surface Combat Air Patrol Ordnance, load consisted of 4 Mark 20 Rockeye cluster bombs and 2 AIM-9 Sidewinder missiles, which gave us a limited air-to-surface and air-to-air offensive punch. The reason the ordnance load was so low is because if we didn't expend it, we had to bring it back aboard the ship. And our aircraft have weight limitations for landing, so we had to make a compromise and put something on the jets that would get somebody's attention and would give us some self-protection in the event we faced Libyan MiGs, and it was just us versus the MiGs, so we had the Sidewinders mounted as well. On the morning of the 26th of March, 1986, Gator and I were manned up in 503 as the man spare. Believe it or not, the XO took a man spare for the 5:15 launch. I was with him. We were manned up in 503 as the man spare for the 5:15 launch. Now, we often spared important missions so as to have a backup aircraft if the primary aborted the launch for a mechanical reason. As Providence would have it, and this has nothing to do with the fact that I wanted to go fly, our primary aircraft aborted, and Gator and I taxied to the CAT.
Who was in the primary?
I don't know, was it?
Yes.
Darn.
It's possible.
Immediately after launch, we were given a hot vector with the direction to Buster. Now, the Buster is aviation language to go at max speed, as fast as you can go. So I did. I bent the throttles over the quadrant and proceeded south. We didn't really know where we were going other than deeper into the Gulf. Shortly thereafter, the Admiral came on the line, and he had a very distinctive voice. We recognized his voice. Very unusual for the Admiral to talk to us, but he did. And at this time, he wasn't yelling at Gator. He was just giving us direction. He gave us the code word to attack. Now, We didn't know exactly what we were directed to attack, but I can tell you what, when I heard that code word, I sucked up the seat cushion real quick, for starters, and both of us started reaching for the armament control unit to set up the weapon, the weapon selection and how they come off the airplane, et cetera, et cetera. We got our combat checklist done, and we were heading south. And we offset to the east, and remember this was the 5:15 launch, so the sun was coming up behind us. We did that offset so that the bad guys would have to look into the sun and not us. We transited at about 2,000 to 3,000 feet, and we were doing probably 450 knots at that point because we were trying to get down south in a hurry. And I just remember the prickly sensation that we were too high. A6 guys don't like to be high. They want to be low. They want to be low and fast, and they want to be down in the weeds because that's where we felt most protected. Well, we confirmed our armament control unit setup and started a gradual descent when Gator actually acquired the fast-moving patrol boat on his radar. Once we got that and we saw what was going on, we agreed that our best attack profile was a pop-up bore sight. I want the people in the front rows to be very careful here because as I describe this maneuver, I may shoot down my watch, and I don't want you to get injured. So the pop-up bore sight maneuver is a very aggressive offensive maneuver for close-in weapon delivery. The maneuver goes, like if this is my target right here, there's my watch, watch out. This is the target. The intruder is going to come in low and fast and move in 3 dimensions at very high G. So you're going to lift up the nose, pull away, roll inverted at the top, pull the nose down, roll out, put your pipper on the target, pickle, and pull.
Max altitude being less than 3,000 feet total.
So that's the pop-up bore sight maneuver that we performed. Now, upon Gator's FLIR determination, after looking through the FLIR and confirming that this was in fact a combatant, a Nanuchka, which is a Russian export fast patrol boat, armed with 4 SSN-2 Charlie surface-to-surface missiles. Those missiles had a 220 nautical mile range. We were probably 180 miles from Coral Sea at this point. So the ship was definitely being threatened. And we were directed to attack this ship because the Admiral got intelligence from whatever black source was available that this guy was meant business and he was coming after Coral Sea. So it was our job to deter him. And we knew the pop-up bore sight was the most effective and probably survivable profile against this ship because this ship was armed with a very, very capable and deadly point defense missile system, the SAN-4. And this whole system was contained on the bow of the ship, and it was hidden behind what we call a manhole cover. It was really an armored door that rotated to the side, and the launcher popped up through that, and that's how the missiles were launched from the ship. Well, we didn't know whether the Nanuchka saw us, knew us we were there, didn't know anything, but we were alone, unafraid, ID card in our teeth, and we were going to go after this guy. We did the pop-up. I remember rolling out, designating the aim point at the manhole cover on the bow of the ship. Now, got any hunters out here? Bird shooters? You know, if you got a moving target, you got to lead the target. So, I wanted my string of bombs to go right down the center of the ship. And so that meant I had to lead the aim point. I did. Gator confirmed the pipper, the aim point selection. I committed, pulled hard, and pulled off target. Watch out, watch. So as I pulled off, I looked over my shoulder and I see a string of white bomblets hitting the water. The ship showing up in a big black spot in the middle of that where the bomblets hit the ship. And then white bomblets beyond that. So this whole string was centered on the ship right in the center. It was a direct hit, it was a bullseye. So we're very proud of that. Okay, after The rock guy likely caused a mission kill. Now, what that means is it didn't sink the ship. It still had mobility. It was still under power, but the weapon system, their radars and communication systems, were likely damaged severely because of the bomblet impacts. So after we pulled off target, ran away, got about 4 or 5 miles away, where we could relax a minute because the SAN-4 wasn't capable beyond about 4 miles. We popped up for a minute, took a deep breath, and started getting set up for a bomb damage assessment pass. And what that means is you make another pass to take a look at what damage you caused. And Gator's taking pictures with a 35 millimeter camera as we go by. This was 1986 now, remember.
You have one of those pictures over there, nose on to the ship, black smoke coming out the side. I took that.
That was Gator's picture. That picture appeared on the front page of Time magazine the next week with attribution to the US Navy. After, as we made our BDA pass, which was low and fast, again, because we didn't, this guy was still moving. We didn't know what capabilities he still had. So the only ordnance we had left was sidewinders, air-to-air missiles. Well, this was a heat source. The ship was burning. Up goes the switches for sidewinders, and we go roaring in there, and I've got good tone on both missiles. Both missiles were tracking that heat source. And we determined between us that if they show any signs that they don't like what we did, we're going to hose them with the sidewinders. Unfortunately, not a peep out of them. So, master arm off, and we got out of the way. Shortly thereafter, an A-6 from VA-85 on Saratoga showed up. He had a harpoon, saying, "I want to play," and so he was approved to shoot his harpoon, fired his harpoon. The missile worked as advertised, sunk in the Nuchka. Now, at this point in our deployment, we were about 7 months into a 6-month cruise, and we had been carrying the load in the Mediterranean for the entire Sixth Fleet. Saratoga showed up about a month or so prior to the Nuchka incident, and they were full of CNN. Saratoga was getting all the viz, all the news clips. Everybody in the U.S. knew what was going on in Saratoga. They had no idea who Coral Sea was. And then about a month later, America shows up. Oh my God! So now we got two showboats, and Coral Sea's there. Well, Gator and I didn't know what was going on the ship after we had taken out this Nuchka. But after the fact, we learned that the word had gotten out on the ship that Coral Sea had drawn first blood. That was us. Well, we came back to the ship normally, routinely, top of the stack, waiting to cycle down to land. And as we were told, everybody knew that Coral Sea had drawn first blood. Well, they didn't know what airplane did it. And so the Hornets landed first, and they all had their ordnance on it. Then the Hummer lands, and Hummers didn't have the ordnance, but he lands. And finally, this lone A-6 comes around the corner, rolls out wings level in the groove. The wings are slick. They knew it was us. We landed, and we went through our normal post-landing procedures, all automatic. Everything happened quickly, and as we got the pullback from the arresting gear, and the wings we cleaned up the wings, and Gator's raising the wings, and I'm watching the yellow shirt directing me to clear the landing area. We took a right-hand turn. We had to stop because everybody on the flight deck was there cheering. Everybody. Now, you remember the reception that Tom Cruise got in Top Gun? I wonder where they got that idea.
Okay, from doing away with the Nanichka, we go like we're going home, like we're supposed to go home. We're supposed to go back to Norfolk. So we go west, right up close to Gibraltar, and go in port in the southern part of Spain. I think it was Spain, yeah. And as you would expect, a little party going on. You know, we rented a suite in one of the hotels and set up what we called an admin. It's somebody knows what that means. Stocked with food every afternoon and alcohol of some sort round the clock. But there was an unwritten rule that you didn't start the alcohol till 1600, 4 o'clock each day. That's pretty true. But in any event, there we are. We think we're going home. A little celebration of the demise of the Nanichka. And next thing we hear is everybody back to the boat. We're not going home. We're going east. There were 2 carriers there that played, America and Coral Sea. Saratoga gone home by then, I think. Saratoga went south of Sicily. Coral Sea went through the Straits of Messina at night, doing about 20 knots. We put one of our jets on the bow, energized the infrared, gave the kid watching the infrared a radio to talk to the bridge, because he could see the barges going back and forth across the Straits of Messina. And this was about, what time?
10 o'clock at night.
At least 10 o'clock. It was dead dark in any event. And he's making calls, okay, right rudder straight, left rudder, to avoid hitting these things that are trying to cross the straits. Well, we come out the other side without hitting anything, and we know game's on. This was all precipitated by the terrorists blowing up a disco in Berlin at Christmas time that killed a bunch of American military people. So that's when Reagan made the decision, game time. So I went back, pulled my plan out of the can, looked at it, okay, it's going to be 6 jets, it's going to be 300 feet, it's going to be 450 knots, but this ordnance load has got to be separated depending on the target you're going to. If you're going after MiGs in the open, or anything that's relatively soft, we're going to carry 8-pan. That's a cluster weapon that weighs 750 pounds, and it's got a whole bunch of little bombers in there that'll burn through tempered steel until they get inside, and then they'll detonate. The other airplanes were carrying 22 500-pound, what we call snakes. They have fins on the back that when they come off, you can drop them from 300 feet. And the fins will open, slow the bomb down, so it's way behind you when it hits the ground and detonates, so it doesn't frag the airplane that dropped it. So they were the 2 ordnance loads. Since we had 6 jets, it was a stream raid, we called it, but it wasn't just 6 in a row. The timing was set up to be 40 seconds apart. The first guy had the predetermined route of flight that I planned when I planned this thing months before. He'd go to this point, go right to predetermined heading, hold it for X number of seconds, turn left and go direct to his assigned target. There were hangars, MiGs in the open, warehouses, a variety of different targets, and the target determined the ordnance that was going there, whether it's 500 pounders or whether it was the cluster weapon. The timing was achieved over the water, that is the splits. And once you got to your last point, you make a turn and you're going straight at the target as fast as you can, and like I said, 300 feet, looking for your aim point. Time on target was 0-200 for the first bomb, and I think we were plus or minus 3 seconds of that being there. think that's it for me in that section.
Lots of sections.
Sorry.
Okay, we were, Gator and I were number 4 in this 6-plane stream raid. We were the lead for the 2nd division of 3 A-6s. And I can tell you, as the flight lead, I had 2 wingmen, each flying heavily laden aircraft. I can tell you that was probably the hardest flying I've ever done in my life. I've mentioned that between Gator and I, 8,000 Intruder hours. This was probably the hardest 25 minutes of those 8,000 hours I've ever been part of. We were at low altitude, bouncing around in the turbulence, in the blackest night, rendezvousing on 3 other airplanes. My main concern, as we were in a left echelon trying to join, was my Dash 3, my last airplane. If I got low on the altitude and got sucked a little bit on the bearing, I'm going to scrape him off in the ocean. So the onus is on me to be the perfect flight lead, the Blue Angel flight lead, on altitude, on airspeed, on bearing line, into the rendezvous. That's what we did. We successfully rendezvoused, which set us up for separation into single ship profiles inbound to the target. I'll differ with Gator here a little bit. He's talking 300 feet. I had the radar altimeter bug set at 100 feet. I mentioned earlier, I get uncomfortable at altitude. And so I've got the rad alt set at 100 feet. We're bouncing off 100 feet. But we were close. We were between 100 and 300. So, but we were doing 420 knots. That was important because we had to maintain separation between ourselves and the aircraft ahead of us, or we could get involved with some fratricide. We could ultimately fly through the leading aircraft's fragmentation or secondary explosions and knock ourselves down. So we had to maintain the airspeed. Our coast endpoint was an active SA-6 site. Those of you who've flown know the capabilities of the SA-6, continuous wave driven and guided missile. Very capable, very dangerous, but Gator selected that as our coast endpoint because that was the only thing that provided verticality on the coastline. The coastline was otherwise flat. Remember, we're flying into the North African desert and there's nothing there. So the radar vans that supported the SA-6 were the only things that were radar significant. Gator selected that as an aim point, and he conveniently coerced a couple of our support Hornet drivers to fire high-speed anti-radiation missiles at that site, and they took the site offline for us before we got there. So we were not threatened by the SA-6. We're about 3 minutes from the target, still over the water, and we're roaring along at 100 feet. Gator's head down in the scope, and he's looking to refine his navigation plan, his targeting, and he's doing the hard work. I'm just flying the jet. I look up to the right, and I start seeing flashes on the horizon, and I know that's the ordnance from my lead aircrafts, number 1 and 2, and those weapons are exploding. And in the flashes, I start seeing telephone poles coming up. Surface-to-air missiles. Well, in the most manly voice I could muster, I said, "Gator, Sam's in the air." Gator was head down in the scope, and I'll never forget it, ever. His head comes out of the scope slowly, looks to the right, goes back down into the scope, and in his own inimitable Southern Louisiana backwoods drawl says, "Voter, I'll worry about the SAMs. You keep us out of the water." Well, we did. As I mentioned earlier, at this point the radar altimeter was bouncing off 100 feet and our airspeed was around 420 knots. Now that's a quotable quote that will stick with me forever, I guarantee you. Our route of flight after the coast endpoint, hit the coast endpoint, took about a 30-degree right turn, direct to the target. Pretty simple. By the time we got to the target area, the first 3 airplanes had stirred things up. There's a lot of metal in the air. By metal, guns, missiles, fragmentation. On our the final leg of our route, Gator had begun automatic chaff and flare expenditure during our final attack. Now that's the chaff and flare is intended to spoof tracking radars and allow us to proceed without being targeted. Now the significance of this crew decision, it's a crew decision, will come into play a little shortly. Now in this attack, our internal communication was simple. Through hours and hours and hours of practice and training, he and I had established an abbreviated cadence that kept each other fully apprised of what the other was doing. I mean, I didn't have to do anything but tap his knee and point to something. I'd get a head nod. Gator knew exactly what I was going to do. If he wanted me to turn left or something, he'd hit me on the side of the head and I'd go left. But we had internal communications that were very abbreviated, and there was no doubt in either of our minds what the other wanted to happen. And so I remember part of my personal checklist was as we got in close to the target to do what was called a COP check on the trigger, computer optical positioning. And what that did was allowed the FLIR presentation that Gator was looking at to be displayed on my primary attitude reference, so I could see what he was looking at in the dark on the FLIR. And so I at about 4 miles from the target, I did a quick COP check, and I'm looking at Gator's FLIR reticles, these aiming points, right in the center of a string of probably 10 or 12 MiG-23s. Right behind it is conveniently placed a hangar. Wow. Good planning, Gator. As our weapons released, 503 literally leapt forward. I mean, it must have picked up 50 knots when we got rid of 15,000 pounds of ordnance. And I glanced over my left shoulder. Now, I just saw the world exploding behind us. If you've ever seen those World War II comic books where P-51s are pulling off a train and the train's blowing up, and that's exactly what it looked like. It was absolutely amazing. It didn't attract my attention away from what I was doing, but it was a pretty good feeling that we had hurt somebody that morning. As I swiveled around forward, our strike lead made the only radio call of the entire strike. And this is another call I'll never forget. Horses, watch the tower off target. So I come right back ahead. Here's horses, watch the tower, and I'm looking at the Eiffel Tower from right on the nose. We're bore sighted on this uncharted tower, and all I could think of is I went into a brake turn and it probably hurt Gator's neck, but I pulled the airplane about as hard as I could at 500 plus knots, and my main concern was hitting one of the guy wires that was supporting the tower and just getting cut in half. I mean, that's what was on my mind. Well, as we were in this planform left-hand brake turn, we get picked up by an SA-3 on site that was just south of the airfield. So we get this high warble and our radar homing and warning gear telling us that we're being tracked, and we're being tracked by an SA-3, which has capability from 200 feet to about 80,000 feet out to about 30 miles. So we are now trying to avoid getting shot at by this SA-3. We got no chaff and flares because we'd used that coming in. And I also forgot to mention, when I mentioned a lot of metal in the air, the wingman behind me told me after the strike that he saw a missile directly overfly our cockpit at weapon release. We were silhouetted against the flames, I guess, and he saw what was probably a handheld missile that fortunately missed. But in any event, we're in this planned U-turn and get lit up by an SA-3, and I reverse, and all we could do to fight this SA-3 was to break lock. Well, the only way to break lock in the desert is to try and hide behind a dune, a sand dune, or maneuver. That's all we had available. We had no chaff and flares, so we were at full power for the next probably 7 to 8 minutes, jinking up and down, back and forth, trying to find something to hide behind. And we're still down at 200 feet now, going real fast. Remember, I get prickly when we get high, so we're going pretty fast off target, and we finally got to about 30 miles and figured, okay, he can't touch us here. And so we made I decelled to about 360 knots, which was a comfortable speed, and started making our way back to the coast to head back to the ship. And as we leveled off, heading back to the ship, heading to our coast out point, right in front of us, I could see some dim flickering lights, and I thought, well, that may be a Bedouin out there or somebody feeding camels or whatever. So I didn't change course, so I decided I was going to fly directly over them and wake them up, if nothing else. And because by now it's about 2:15, 2:18 in the morning. And as we overflew this walled village, these were cooking fires apparently, and I looked over the canopy rail and I could see red tile roofs. We were that low at 2:15 or 2:20 in the morning. So I guess our night vision was pretty acute. We hit our coast out point and began a climb to return to the ship. As we passed about 5,000 feet on the climb, I began to relax a little and resumed my normal instrument scan. Now remember, I'd been trusting 503 throughout this whole mission. I wasn't looking at the gauges that much to see what the engines were doing, or oil pressure, or hydraulic gauges, any of that normal stuff. I was worried about the attitude reference and the altitude. And I was worried about Gator hitting me. So what I saw when I resumed my scan just horrified me. I hit Gator's leg, I pointed to the fuel gauge, 1,200 pounds remaining. And we got at least 200 miles to the ship.
We've been burning about 8,000 pounds an hour.
Now, here's where the first question comes. NATOP's bold. Where's Vito? Vito, pack forward. What does NATOP say about when the gas gauge is at 1,200 pounds?
Very unreliable, you can run out of gas.
That's exactly what we thought. Well, when I saw that, I immediately picked up a bingo profile. A bingo is another acronym or code word for max range cruise, if you will. And so you configure the airplane and fly a certain angle of attack and airspeed, and that gets you the best, the max bang for the buck, the most miles per gallon. Now, I did that even though it would serve no useful purpose because we didn't have enough gas to get back to the ship. So we had to get gas someplace. And as we continued our climb, heading toward a rendezvous with our pre-planned airborne KA-60 tanker, I noticed Gator moving around and doing things I'd never seen from him. First thing that happens is kneeboard comes off and he throws it up in the glare shield. Second thing, he's cinching down his oxygen mask, tightening it up. Next, he's tightening up his lap belts, getting snugged up into the seat, shoulder harness is tight. In a flash of brilliance, I realized he was preparing for a potential ejection. Not to be outdone, I followed suit. I did the same thing. Now, finding the tanker and getting rendezvoused was not without unusual challenges. And one of those challenges is sitting right over here. Tom McCavitt, the bombardier in that tanker. Tom and his pilot gave us 8,000 pounds of gas that night. And that's the most fuel I've ever taken while flying an A-6. Now, the 6-hour time difference between the central Mediterranean and Virginia Beach accounts for the ironic timing that a squadron officers' wives club meeting that Sharon was hosting at our house in Virginia Beach was breaking up. Now, as usual, the wives had a couple of televisions running. CNN was making early reports of the Libyan strikes. A reporter was aboard Coral Sea, believe it or not. Who would want to go to Coral Sea? And was reporting that all but one of the Coral Sea strikers had checked in and were returning to the ship. Now, as was told to me after we returned from cruise, Sharon and Susan, when they heard that, immediately made eye contact and knew that the late airplane was us. Now, I think I need to digress for a minute and point out that this paranormal response is typical of naval aviators' wives. They know everything. They don't let us get away with anything. Now, they were relieved when 20 minutes or so later, CNN reported that all strikers were accounted for. We got in our fuel and we're heading back for recovery. Now, in closing, for my part, we're here to celebrate the success of one of our national treasures and the men who flew and maintained Warhorse 503. To that end, a critical player who was largely responsible for 503's care and feeding during 8 months at sea aboard Coral Sea, and I'm going to call him my plane captain, is Petty Officer Golshek, whose name is forever painted in a place of honor for A-6 plane captains, and that's the port and starboard main landing gear door. Petty Officer Golshek practically lived in the airplane, monitoring fluid levels, panel integrity, brake riding, jury strut integrity, landing gear pins, helping us to strap in before flight, and countless housekeeping issues to ensure 503 was ready to go. 38 years is a long time, and I can't recall if I truly thanked you for your dedication, attention to detail, and tenacity as my plane captain. So today, as we celebrate the proud service of 503 and all the warhorses, I want to take one more opportunity to recognize you and thank you for your service. I salute you. Now, Petty Officer Golshek is the old guy out there with the gray hair. He was a lot younger when I first knew him. What a wonderful guy. I'll never forget. I'll never forget.
Upon conclusion of the ceremony, Woodard and I have some small tokens of our appreciation to distribute to the volunteers that made this airplane look like it looks and be here like it is. That we'd like to share with you. Thank you all for being here and for listening to two old farts, if you will, share memories. Great machine, saved me a lot of times in Vietnam and certainly in this experience. Thank you for the enthusiastic audience participation, courtesy, and camaraderie you displayed today. May 503 long stand in this place of honor and remembrance as a combat-proving warbird that always got its crew home.
All right, that's going to be a tough act to follow, but we,
Watch your watch.
yeah, I don't want to shoot my watch down. But as a token of appreciation and everything, I had Mike over at Fast Signs. He was able to scale down our information display sign to 11 by 17. So I wanted to give that to Boater, Gator, and Pete. If you want to come up.
Pete.
So, but this is what they look like. It's a replica of the display sign. You're welcome. And that's one of our commemorative challenge points to give each of you here. So that's our dedication challenge coin. Well, you might have to take the Amtrak. They don't have a weight limit on the luggage. One for you, Gator.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, and I think gentlemen from VA 65 have something as well.
Of all
personnel salute BA-65 for 1945 and 1993. Please accept this with our appreciation and thank you very much for serving.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
One final announcement, and then you'll be rid of me until perhaps later this afternoon. The Intruder Association has sponsoring a, I'll call it an adult happy hour this afternoon at the VFW Hall. We should have beer, wine, sodas, a couple of munchies. Specifically intended for the volunteers as a thank you for your efforts in getting 503 to the condition it is now. Since we have one or two volunteers, I think you probably ought to invite the rest of your friends to join you at the VFW Hall. And I suspect that, I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be open, but 12:30 should open up, and that's just right about now. Timing is everything, they say. And I think that after what we've done today, there's probably going to want to take some pictures around the jet. I know Sharon and I want to get some snaps for our grandkids, and this is one of the ways you can impress your grandson. So that's what I'm going to do. But we'll see you over there, and I'll ask you that you maintain your decorum, as most intruders do. And if you feel so inclined, you might be able to exceed one beer and one peanut. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just real quick, that's the VFW post over in Du Bois Town, just across the Arch Street Bridge there. I'm not sure what the address is. I can look it up and get it to anybody. 150 Schaefer Street. I think it's in the program too, their address, so you can just punch it into the GPS if you need to.
Well, I don't think you were disappointed in the presentation today. This is living history. It's not Oliver North's war stories. You heard it first here. So we want you to take those comments and the feats of these gentlemen and their wives. They were right alongside, really. But take those home to your families, your children, and relive them. Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Oh, and you better be prepared with a challenge coin because, or you're going to be buying beer all afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, would you once again please welcome Nick Biddle for a vocal presentation? At the end of Nick's presentation, I would ask that you please stand for the benediction by Chaplain Hartzell and the retirement of the colors.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I'd thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. and I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit town to Houston and New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I'd gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I proudly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. God bless the
If you would uncover. I began this with an invocation with the first and third verses from the Navy hymn. The last two lines of both, "Oh, hear us when we cry to thee, for those in peril on the sea." And the third verse, "Oh, hear us when we lift our prayer, for those in peril in the air." Today we have heard stories, we've seen history, we've heard about it, about this plane, about the men that flew it, and they flew it to protect us. My brothers and sisters, what an awesome day, what a beautiful day. And just as God had His hand on these men as they flew this plane and served this country, just as God has His hand upon all of our men and women serving today, He has His hand on you. Leave this place, go back out into the world and live as one who is free because of our history. Live as one who's free because we live in a great and free country. Go in the peace of God that this world cannot take away, but only the peace that God can give us. Go, and may God bless you, and may God bless you.
Color Guard Captain, retire the colors. I'd like to thank everybody for your attendance here today. It's been a magnificent day. Go out and enjoy it.